Welcome to Under the Brown Rainbow, where South Asian queer stories come to life. I'm your host Kashif, and this podcast is proudly presented by Trikone Australia. In each episode, we dive into the diverse and often unheard narratives of the South Asian LGBTQI+ community, celebrating love, identity, and resilience. So my dears and my queers, join us as we honor the stories that shine brightly under the brown rainbow. Hello and welcome to Under the Brown Rainbow, where South Asian queer stories come to life. I'm your host, Kashif Harrison. I'm a queer performer and presenter. Today, I'm super excited to share this episode with you because I think this is going to be the brown people, the brown gays over the years kind of episode. So it's so many stories to share with you, and I'm super excited to get into the episode. But before I do that, I do want to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Trikone Australia. So please make sure that you give us a follow on the socials. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. Now, let's begin Under the Brown Rainbow. So today on the show, I've got BT Sahab, and I'm very excited to have you, sir. It's because that whenever we talk about the queer South Asian community in Australia, everyone knows your name. Right. Whether it is as a poet, whether it is as an artist, whether it is as a very lovely friend or someone who just tells us
Thank you very nice, Kashif. Thank you.
I'm super excited for this. Now, Vidisab, tell me that you came to Australia when?
My first entry to Australia was 1984.
Okay.
And at that stage, I had an English partner. So my life started in Kenya, of Indian descent. And, with us, moving, migration is part of our equation. And so I was living in London and I was planning to come to Australia. And before I came, I met my partner in a bar in London. And that sort of slightly confused me because he wanted me to stay there. And my family were reliant on me to get the visa so they could move here. Half my family were here. So what I decided, and it was a very tough time. On one side, you have your partner, but he was very supportive. And we decided that I'd spend a year here to get my visa established, everything. Then I went back. So my first entry was 84. And since then, we've been coming and going and, living in different parts of the world. And then I would say permanently staying here since early 90s, Yeah. And I love Australia. It's a beautiful place. But, I suppose what happened was it was like one of those Bollywood films, the train is leaving and you meet someone and you go, kya karenge, abhi kya hoga, mera visa chala jayega, mere maa baap ro to ke gareeb ho jayenge. And so I had to negotiate that, but he was very, very comforting, and he said, "We'll do what is necessary." But his Kibi story is interesting. That when I met him in a bar in London, which was called Napoleon's, and you had to wear a tie to get in because it was all under the radar in those days, and it was a members club, very in the right part of town. And what you did is if you're young and pretty, you hung around outside and someone would sign you in. And so I got in and so that's how that side of the story began. But he actually lied about his age by 20 years because I was, young and free. But we had a very interesting connection because I'm from Kenya and he'd worked in Kenya. So he knew all the lingo about how to refer to my mother, as Lalita Ben, and my father as... So he had all that, the etiquette, but he lied about his age by 20 years. And I think if he had told me, maybe I would have just gone. And in those days, remember, there was no mobile phones, there was no email. So I remember, we met in that. And this was a very beautiful... In fact, I wish there were more clubs like that because you knew you would meet someone solid, serious, it wasn't like a vetting, but just by the idea of wearing a tie with a high membership fee, maybe it's saying barrier, and they had like a cocktail bar, a restaurant. I love gay restaurants because you actually engage in a better way. And then a dance area as well. And then I said, well, you meet someone and in the morning, well, our cars followed. We nearly lost each other. It's all about like a Bollywood story, I tell you. And then I arrived and he owned this hotel and I didn't know he owned this hotel. We went to he had the penthouse at the top and you're young and free and, whatever. And so in the morning I said, yeah, that's it. Fine. Lovely, lovely. I'm going to Australia anyway. I'll see you later. And he said, I want to give you something. And I said, really, I don't need money or I'm okay, It's that sort of, I know it's like, sounds like patronage, but often that happens, but it doesn't happen either. But so I said, no, I don't need any. But he said, no, before you, because he said, how will I even reach you? How will I contact you? And I was living in a kind of college hostel and, they'd ring up and there's a call for number 48 and it would take you 45 minutes. So he was obviously, so I said, I don't need, and he gave me this envelope. And in the envelope was the key to the hotel. And so that's how it began. And within a week, we were serious. But what I'm saying is, you asked me the question about Australia, but on this side, I had the responsibilities and on that side. And sitting here today, there was a lot of anxiety, mental issues, whatever, family pressure. How could you not go to Australia? Because politics, you understand. But we've navigated all that, and I'm sitting today in front of you. And I think what I've learned is you are looked after. If the third sex are very close, to the whatever is beautiful.
Yeah.
And honestly, my whole journey now, and then I come to Australia, I had to work for a year. And, in those days, you could only leave after staying here for a year. And then AIDS broke out. And the headlines in every newspaper was, as you can imagine, and I remember I was living in Potts Point and I had to go and have a test and it wasn't as easy as these days. And, I used to walk around the clinic hoping for the best, and it began to really surface. So that was in a way, so in some ways I'd met someone and then, he came out in 1 year 4 times to see me. So he was keen.
If he's flying for you, he's definitely keen.
But what I'm saying is like, Prem Kahaniya, and it's in a way, this is our story. But I hope, people listening in can, I wasn't like, I've always been a bit of a dreamer. At school, I was the loner. I was always the reader and, the games, you were useless. I remember cross country, I came last and the number I had was number 1 and I had to be rescued by the teachers because I'd collapsed somewhere with all that, brown sort of stigmas and, you don't like cricket but and in those days as well, like, I don't know whether Navaratri, and there was a dance troupe and it wasn't a queer, it was just like in Navaratri in small towns, they have this. So, after everyone's dance, there's a performance every night.
Yeah.
And some people would be asked to dress up as women. And, so, you had gods and goddesses and everyone got their turn, and then some people enjoyed it. I mean, I'm not particularly, but, your turn came and you had to dress up, And, what I remember is wearing the wig and blood, It's not easy wearing wigs, The blouse was too tight. And my father, when he saw me, you could see there was something changed. He didn't say anything. But in some ways, and there was a lovely Pakistani hairdresser there, and he used to do everyone's hair and everything. So, that's like, so I'm talking about and I had a boyfriend from the age of 5. So I think,
BD Saab, you're like an encyclopedia. You one page open and then
yeah. So you have to stop me.
yes, now I am going to do that. Now, you touched a bit about AIDS epidemic, right? And I know that this may get a bit, heavy, but I do want to ask you that how was it? Here you are, a brown person, right? And it was around 84,
Yes.
that you're saying,
Yeah.
and the AIDS epidemic broke. Talk us through actually that how was it for brown queer people per se during that time? Your friends, and what was that situation where you felt, okay, fine, we're actually safe from this?
Well, I won't say the last thing. You didn't feel safe because, like, there was a guy called Fred Nile, and every day the newspaper, they deserved the Black Death. They were like, the whole front page was like a black, like just literally the whole society was saying, you deserve this. Now, here I wasn't at home. I didn't have a partner, my family. I was living in a room in Potts Point, and you're getting all this, and I thought I was going to die for sure because there was no positivity. There was no ACON. There was no clinics. There was nothing except what they said is if you're scared, you can get tested. So I think I must have had so many tests. Then you're lonely. Now in our lives, how do you make connections? So, you go to clubs and you couldn't go because you were frightened. What's going to happen? Now, in those days, I can't remember seeing many brown people on the scene in Sydney because the brown implosion or the big populations have really arrived in the last 20 years, I remember there was one little shop in Bondi. If you saw one Indian, you'd run after them. So, it was like there was nothing, no Indian restaurants. And so I can't even say. But where I was lucky is because I was from London. So the Aussies kind of gave me a little. And I'll have to tell you, I had one of the good things about it's a network. So when I arrived here, because of my partner had been gay all his life, so I had a couple of introductions. And this one couple in Paddington, and actually they took me in and they gave me furniture and they consoled me and said, and the reality is one of them actually died of AIDS in 2 years' time after that. And then after a year, I went back to London. So, if you, I would say, and remember the disease was identified as coming from Africa. So it was a Black Death. So there were a lot of connotations, And I remember in the office, people were saying, you have to have your own cup, because there was no knowledge of, and you dare not tell anyone. And also, I've always lived in sort of the closet, which we'll talk about. And then, so I spent the year, and in a way, my partner came. We went back, and London had broken big time. Kids were being thrown out of their houses. People's belongings were on the street. Their frozen food was with their clothes. And my partner was always and he said, we have to do something. We don't know what to do. But he said, what I do know is I know how to raise money. If we have money, we can at least give these guys hotel vouchers. The kids who are literally on this. We had a case, Brazilian boy, 19-year-old, just chucked out on the street like a stray. And I'm so proud to say that within 6 weeks, he raised, just by his network, £1 million.
Wow. And this is back in those days.
6 weeks.
Wow.
And then they said now, and they were like, gay people can be very powerful and some like lawyers, top of the tree people, world. And, he just had to make 6 phone calls and $1 million. And what they decided to do is said, now what do we do? And that's when like an Acorn type foundation was being formed. And they would say, what, we have this money, what? And the first thing I remember, they started giving hotel vouchers, because like people need to live somewhere. Then the second thing is they decided, well, this is needed, badly needed. So they formed a charity called Crusade. And Crusade was instrumental in Dance for Life, Art for Life, Princess Diana, Elton John, they all got involved. And my partner was quite a organizer and his story was his father died in the war at the age of 17. He was living in a room in London. And he remembered saying, all I had is a skylight. And I said, I have to make my life. And then he did very well at work. And then at work, they said, but he's not married. How do we promote him? And the chairman said, what we need is eccentric people in our board. We don't want silly, crusty accountants. And that's why he got promoted. So he knew how to. And so from that, and then back to the charity, within 3 years, they raised £50 million. So that's the birth of Acorn, because, it's lovely to help people, but you do need money. And I'd be very, Princess Diana, she said to my pa, he literally had a phone number. And she would say, I'd do anything. And she was the first person to touch a person with
Exactly.
it. And on this side, we were losing friends by the dozen. And my father's, my partner's best friend was a cabinet minister who was the first public figure to die of AIDS. And we literally saw him go from this giant of a man to a man crawling on his knees, blind. And, and within a year, bang. And, and friends. And so he would always say, oh, you've got to battle on. He said, you just have to fight on. While as I did India, oh my God, kaise hua, kya hua. But now I realize he was right. We were both right. But so I think to answer that, but I think the main thrust of was that we didn't sit back. He went for it.
It did so.
And 50 million. And the biggest money spinner in all that, it wasn't the royal galas and the Diana event. It was the charity walks, which were the biggest. The rest was all waste of time, So, to give you, on one hand, there was a lot of devastation, but on the other, and it took 10, 15 years before it was normalized,
Now, so that sounds, I can only imagine because we only see this about AIDS in the movies, especially, those millennials who were not there. But yes, it sounds where there was devastation, like you said, there was hope.
Yeah.
And the hope got us out of it. Now, can I ask you that over the years, in Australia specifically, how have you seen the South Asian queer community scene grow?
Thank God for Tricon, is what I'll say. I have been to every bar Bombay dance. And when the first one happened, I'd been coming and going. And back to London, there was also an Indian group there, or South Asian group called Shakti. But, and again, it was sponsored. It started 10 years before Tricon in London. But sadly, there wasn't harmony over there for some reason. I don't know why the boys and the girls didn't get on. They were getting on. So it sort of disintegrated, and people listening to this might note why. And so we used to go, but it was a dance party, like just a disco with about maybe 100 people, 200 people under a government umbrella. So we used to go. And I'll just take you back a few years back in Africa. So because I was born in Africa, and then I went back to Africa. And in Africa, there were 3 levels of queer society. So there were a lot of married men. Okay? Then there was the white person who liked dark-skinned people. And then there was people like when I say not normal is a bad word, but just everyday people. And I was usually the only one amongst all those scenarios. I never came across, I mean, I have a friend in Mumbai who's like in media and everything, and I've known him for 20. And even in Mumbai, he says, even today, he said, two men living together is rare because everything's company title. So they check your religion, whether you're vegetarian, whether you're this. So he said, it's quite, so going back to Trikon, so, and I remember, I think Kunal was at the first party, and it was such a relief, to meet your family in a way. And I mean, I like music, and my partner, he never got to Tricon. We were always traveling, but I managed to make it happen. And so I think Tricon was so instrumental and also very harmonious, I would say. Maybe it's a Sydney thing. Maybe I've just been to Melbourne and I don't know how you define, but Sydney has this young energy, like a 19-year-old. And perhaps Tricon benefited from that. And, they were held in Marrickville, in one of those. And there was always a gusto, there was enthusiasm, there was an elan. And I don't remember many problems. And I think we had quite an influx of Bangladeshi people who were dancers, and a lot of them are not longer. But we've seen, and now it goes up to 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And but I have not come across. And on the other hand, with the queer brown people, because of my partner, I was very lucky to enter the Anglo-Saxon society, so he had the right intros. But I still, in that world, there are very few brown people visible. If you go to the art scene, if you go to the Art Gallery of New South Wales, the private part is not just the opening. And I was a patron for a while. And you're generally the only brown person. So let alone brown queer person, you're the only brown person in the room, So I think Australia is changing. Now I know in America, it's all about education. It's about prosperity. In the US, I think the young kids who are born there, they are arrived and they are joining those institutions, becoming visible, becoming, say someone like Vikram Seth, who was a very famous writer and poet. And he lived, he wrote that book called On Golden Gate. But even when you read his story, he went back to India and he lived with his mother, joke, but he lived with his mother. She was the first judge in the history of India. But even if you read between the lines, and the other person who inspired me a lot was Ismail Merchant, Merchant Ivory Productions, So I would say he was the greatest brown voice because he was a boy from Mumbai, from a very middle class. When I say middle class, I mean, these are wrong words but he wasn't, they weren't. So he had 7 sisters. He was a Muslim and the youngest boy. And his father was in film business. And his father knew all the actresses of the time, the famous Madhubalas. And here is Ismail. And his father said, no, the boy has to go to America. So he went to America to do his MBA. And he was a poor fellow, So, he used to earn money by working as a lift man. And you know what he used to do? If he saw someone interesting in the lift, he would say, come for Sunday lunch. Because he was a good cook, biryanis and rotis. And that's how he met James Ivory. And James Ivory had money. But he was, and so they became a couple. And then they met Ruth Prover Jabwala, who was married to she's not Indian, but she was married to, and she wanted to write. That's how they became a film production. And they started with nothing, but Ismail had the film experience because of his father. And James Ivory recently won an Academy for his, Call Me By Your Name. And then Ruth Prover Jabwala, she's won Booker Prizes. But just to finish off on that one, Ismail, they had no money. So the first film they did, Shakespeare Wala with Shashi Kapoor, and he hadn't paid him for 6 weeks. And Shashi Kapoor said, Bhaiya, हमको, हमारे भी घर में है लोग, he said, कल आपको दूंगा. And then he paid him. And then when he went home, he said to his wife, you won't believe Ismail paid me today. You know what she said? He borrowed the money from me. So what I'm trying to say is, like, in some ways, I suppose that was, and he was an inspiration. If he can do it, and he was very strong, very aggressive. So I would say, I mean, it may not be the sort of brown queer story people may associate with, but it's there.
Yeah, it's like one of the brown stories of brown creatives or people out in the media being talked about. Do you think that, being brown and queer back then, in your times, it was a bit of a, don't disclose your identity. If you disclose your identity, you'll be, either taken off the job or something or the other that we see in the movies,
Your
right?
family.
Yes, exactly. A lot of things. And now, since you've seen both the times, that time, which was very restricted, and now this time where every other people, I think being brown and gay is more easy now,
Oh, yeah.
right, than that. What is that difference that you see from there? Do you see that people are now being accepted more? Families have changed their perception? Or do we still need to keep having those conversations like,
Firstly, I'd like to salute all the filmmakers, all the artists, all the people who made us gently visible. And it was very, as I said, in Bombay, to rent a flat. Or what religion, non-veg. Arey bhai, ye to chodo, first vegetarian hai. So within all that structure, people made stories. And I think we are here because of them. So our families, like my mother was an illiterate woman, so she knew a hijra, that's all. But she didn't know anything else. So I never actually came out because I said, I have to assess whether she can digest this, But funnily enough, what you realize is mother knows everything. So what I'm saying is, like, gently and steadily, but I never came out, so to speak. But I was also very fortunate. कि किस्मत से I had someone behind me. And, with Indians, they love money. So they would say, आप दोनों का क्या रिश्ता है? मैंने, I'd say, नहीं देखो ना कितना पैसा है, कोई तो चाहिए ना, मैं उनका तो ये देख रेख करता हूँ. So we did it, people may say it's not right. But what I learned is you have to negotiate. And even my partner was allowed within certain circle. It was that time, we I don't know, we perhaps weren't strong as you people are. But I would really salute, like, Ismail Merchant, he had a partnership. This was back in the 60s, 70s, wrote cookbooks. He was aggressive, Bikram Seth. But, these are very intellectual scenarios, and you go to India, it's quite a negative feel to it all. But I think education, but filmmaking, artistry, creativity, I think, people see people who are like just ordinary human beings. We, and even with the hijras, as you know, in the small, when they are really respected in smaller societies, so there's all that negativity. But I think gently, but even today, I've heard when people come out, generally parents say, don't say anything to anyone, so it's changing. But in my case, after my mother, and my mother towards the end, she said, she didn't know really, because for 40 years I was living in my life. She knew my partner. She knew everything. She stayed with us. But we felt, why? She doesn't need to know. But you know what they know in the end? She said, I just don't want you to be lonely, Whether it's gay, man, woman, Chinese, Japanese, I sound very Indian. But I think what you to realize is they want the best for you, but they do it in a very destructive way. But, in the end, what you realize is they always knew. And in my sister's case, after my mother died, Oh, she said, oh, you should have come out. We would have supported you. Yeah, if I would have been in your shoes. But, I say, yeah, she said, you should have come out. I used to love Michael. And he was so lucky. Yeah, he was such a beautiful man. But yeah, he is in the, I could have done it many different ways. But in the end, am I happy or sad? I'm content. Am I lonely? Maybe. But I have boyfriends now. I go with the flow. I say, oh, married hai to kya? Who cares? I have friends who say, oh, he's married. I say, arey bhai, you're 70 years old. Jo bhi milta hai, karo na. Party jitna ho sake.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, just learn to be creative. Never see yourself as someone who's not deserving. We are protected. The third sex, our holy text, we are seen as miracle workers. But these signs disappeared and they're slowly coming back.
That's beautiful. Now, so this is my last question to you, that you're very fond of your partner, right? And you tell him, I think he lives on within your stories.
Yeah, he does.
Right? How long were you together? And what is that one piece of advice that you could give to the queer couples who are living together, moving in together, getting into a partnership? What is that one advice that you could give to them?
Don't expect happiness from others. First, make your own vibration vibrate. And what I would say to people, if you got 1 minute, look at a color and say, I'm special, I'm special, I'm special. Wo kya karega ki your vibration become positive, and then you attract positive vibration. So even within our relationship, I think we were both vibrating good energy, So we were giving it to each other, but hum dunya ko bhi help karte the. He raised all this money for people, And, I must say money does help, And like, if we can raise more money. But what I'm saying, what I would say is, and, like, if you're vibrating, things will come to you. You don't need to worry. Sab sort out ho jayega. And family mein jab, if there's a, but, if you love each other, you'll find a solution. But, these days it's all about, zip ye nahi hai, ye nahi hai, ye nahi hai. But, look at what, hey, I've had a relationship with this married guy for 12 years. 40 saal we were together. And then I met this guy 12 years ago, married hai, conservative hai, all this, he has this issue. 12 saal ho gaye, And what I say is, like, we have similar, so I don't say, oh, you can't come tomorrow, or why can't you come? I say, okay, I'm not reliant on you. I have my own space. I'm happy. Oh, you can't come, there'll be another. I'm going to an art show. So what I'm saying is, vibrate good and learn to do that. And it's so easy. Look at any light, look at any color and say, I'm special. 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minutes. And if you can do 20 minutes, yaar, sab badal jayega. So I know I'm sounding a bit oldie here, but what I mean is it really works, because what you project, you get back.
Exactly.
Or ye dunya mein, with internet, it's zip, zip, zip. So there's a lot of negativity. When you're zipping, you feel negative stuff coming. They are good people, out there. And in fact, this married guy, I met him at a gay social party. So, and then 3 months later, I got this call and he said, oh, no, 2 years it took. Remember me? I said, oh, but and then I said, oh, okay, you got your wife. All right, I can't come. Fine. I suppose वो मैं क्या बोलता हूँ, self-reliance, but vibrate. You don't have to be like Sati Savitri or what. You are like, you have your own vibration. So हमारा तो, you're positive and
that's a
happy.
good one. I think I'll take good vibrations, spread good vibrations, feel good vibrations. Speaking of good vibrations, we're going to end this podcast now, episode, but you are a poet, BT Sahab. And we cannot end this episode without a little two lines from you. Okay.
Okay.
So
here we go.
There you go.
Okay. A second, me, 60 seconds, my body on this red. A day, the light of the orange sun. A week, the life of a yellow daffodil. A month, my pink heart in a deep green rainforest. A year, the gentle blue ocean. A decade, a flowing purple robe. An era, a golden light. The world history, an imaginary white lotus. The next second, a single step. Sa re ga ma pa da ni sa.
Thank you so much.
Well, it's been a pleasure. You've been so kind to me, everyone,
We love
And
you.
keep on going. You see, this has only happened good vibration, good vibration. Kunal, you see, you're vibrating and attracting. And, we have to do this because there are a lot of people, not just here, but in India, people are not rich, they are earning nothing and they have to vibrate to them so we can change their lives too.
Thank you so much. And yes, you need to listen to these beautiful queer stories. And we're trying to do that on Under the Brown Rainbow. So thank you so much for watching this episode. Make sure you like and share the video, subscribe to our socials, and wherever you find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, do follow us. This is me, Kashif, signing off from Under the Brown Rainbow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Beauty Sahab.
Thank you. Keep sparkling.
Thank you for joining us on Under the Brown Rainbow, which is proudly presented by Tricone Australia. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with your family, friends, and allies. Follow us on social media and feel free to reach out with your own stories. This is Kashif signing off. Until next time, my dears and my queers, keep shining brightly under the brown rainbow.